I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:02, July 24th, 2019. This is the SAU Board meeting. This is a special meeting of the SAU Board. Mrs. Belcher, could you call the roll, please?
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie. Kimberly Farah.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
Kristen Savage. Susan Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
James Sweeney. Karen Yasenka.
Here.
Here for administrators are the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, CFO Business Administrator, Jeff Dowd, Director of Human Resources, Nancy Lewisell.
Thank you. Could you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into the approval of the minutes, I want to raise a question or a topic here with the board regarding the live streaming. I do appreciate Mrs. Belcher turning on the camera and starting the camera, but if it pleases the board, I would like the superintendent to take an action item so that we have somebody who is from the technology staff or a student or somebody else that can run these live streams and turn these on. I know in Danville, we teach high school students how to do it, and I would like to see that we're able to have this working, especially since Timberlane invested quite a bit of money into new equipment in the last year. Is everybody in agreement by consensus?
I am.
I'm not.
You're not? You think we only should have one person that's able to do this?
I
And
think,
that Mrs. Belcher needs to do double duty? Go ahead.
so you're going to say what I'm going to say, or you're going to let me have a turn to speak? May I have the floor?
Yes, go
Thank
ahead,
you.
sorry.
Once again, the live streaming, the filming is for our community members. It's a courtesy. It's not a regulation. The minutes are the record of the meeting. It's only a courtesy. Of course, I'd like it live streamed if possible. But there are circumstances. I'm not sure where the equipment is at this time of year. They do some repair, some downtime. I don't know if you investigated any of that. We did invest in new microphones. We didn't invest in a whole new computer system to shoot it out over non-fiber, because we have not gone fiber yet. So I'm just saying, I think it's a courtesy, not a requirement.
Mr. Boyle.
I agree, it's a courtesy and a requirement, Sue, but I think unless there's a valid reason why this can't be done. For example, if the equipment isn't available or being repaired, that's a valid reason. I would think that something the size of Timberlane would have technology people that you could get somebody in here. Obviously, we can't expect, besides Mrs. Belcher, you can't expect Dean to be the sole person, keeper of the camera. So I would think it would make sense to have some sort of backup.
Mr. O'Neill?
I would agree, that we should have no longer a single point of failure. Redundancy is a good thing in this case, and the cost of implementing something like this is negligible, to be honest. There's a lot of people that are looking for this meeting. I personally, not that just this meeting, but all of our meetings should be live streamed. I wanted to look last night at the withdrawal meeting, come home after dinner with my girlfriend, find out it's not live streamed. So guess what? I don't know what actually happened last night. And when that video will come up, who knows? We've already lost one of our school board meetings due to glitches. So, and it's not a fault of anybody. Things happen. But the problem is that we don't have people that understand that equipment to the degree that Dean does. And that's a travesty to the community.
Sarah?
I'd also like to reiterate what Mrs. Sherman said, where this is not the official record of our meetings. Our minutes are the official record of our meetings. And this is a special meeting. It's not one that was previously scheduled. Even if we had 2 or even 3 people trained, it's the summer. There's no guarantee that these people would even be around. To pull a high school student out from whatever summer activities he or she is doing with an expectation to come and cover a special meeting of the SAU or the school board, I feel is an unnecessary expectation, and I don't feel it's necessary at this point.
Anybody from Hampstead want to weigh in?
My only comment is, yes, it's great to have live stream when we can. I do feel a little bit like it's a Timberlane decision, because if there is a cost involved, it's Timberlane equipment. I'm not totally up to speed on who there is, who runs it, and everything else. Besides, I know Dean is here most of the time, but
Right, sorry.
that's my only.
Dr. Metzler?
Yeah, the complication here is really people's vacation schedules, last-minute meetings called without advance notice. People have schedules. I certainly can look into this in terms of trying to train some other people when people come back from vacation. I don't know how long that will take, but this is not as simple. It's as simple as Kathy Belcher hitting it to record, but the operation of that equipment and that sort of thing is far more technical. It's well beyond, I don't understand. I would rely on Ken Henderson. So it's something we certainly can look into, but you need to be sensitive to the fact that when you're calling these last-minute meetings and pulling these things together 3 nights in a row and people are on vacation, we don't have people that are available on summer nights just to come here. They're not working, right? So now you're asking us just to get somebody that hasn't even been trained to train them, but for the people that aren't working are the people that would train them. So this is going to take some planning and some work to get other people involved if we're going to need other people to actually run this equipment. So it's not as simple as just pull somebody off the street and tell them to run the live stream. It's really not that simple.
I don't think I implied it was that simple. I
Well,
implied
you
that
just
we
said
need a
grab-
plan in place.
Grab a high school kid sounds like,
Well,
that's an implication that it's very simple. Can I finish,
well-
please? That's an implication that it's very simple. It's far more complicated than that. It's not that simple. As you know, we even had a USB that was infected. That's why we lost the school board meeting. That was not a meeting that I was at, but I wanted to watch the meeting too. I didn't have access to it. That video is gone because the USB was somehow infected. So we lost one of our meetings. So, I rely on our technology director, and certainly if it's at the will of the board, it's something we can look into, but it will take some time for the people that are on vacation to come back to actually train some other people to be available to do this. So it's not as simple as, just snap your fingers and have somebody come in and run the equipment. And I'm not saying you said that, but I don't think it's for high school kids to run our equipment. I don't.
Okay, could we, go ahead. Mrs.
Actually,
Silva?
Mrs. Silva was first.
I'm just wondering, how many people do we have that are capable of recording the meetings?
I'd rely on Ken Henderson for that in terms of who has the technical skills to be able to run and record and post our videos. That's really his world, so I would ask him. I don't know the number, so.
Yeah, I didn't take it as anything that is simple to do, and we do have a lot of meetings, so I was asking how many people we have that are trained to do that, because I agree that it is a nicety, not a necessity, to have the meetings recorded. I know a lot of people have reached out to me, and they've gotten quite used to having the benefit of being able to watch them live stream. So if there is a way to look down the line to have more people trained to be able to do that, I think the community would appreciate it.
Mrs. Lowe's?
I'm having an issue with the exact thing that Mrs. Silva said as far as how many people are able to run this equipment. And I do believe we actually have high school students that run the PAC equipment when they have musicals and so forth, that help out up in the PAC.
Not without adult supervision.
I understand that, but my point is that we do have kids that are actually interested in this. So I would like to know, I would like to see, Dean's one person. He's only one person. God forbid something happens.
All right.
We
so
don't have we don't have a backup.
If the board's in agreement, I'd like just a short written summary. How many people are capable of running this equipment now? What would it take to train people? Can we train people? And what would be the cost? if these are obviously, I'm not even sure how Mr. Henderson gets compensated, so I want to know, I'd like to know the cost. And really, ideally, if we could train high school students, I know you have a lot of turnover, I think it's a great experience for them. Again, this is not the same equipment that we have in Danville, but I do know we use high school students in Danville, and we do live stream. So I'd like to give high school students this opportunity if possible, if it's reasonable. But I certainly think we need to know how many people can operate this equipment. And some of these meetings, special meetings, it's not a requirement, but it would be nice to have, and we have the equipment. And the cost of this, I would think, is relatively minimal. So can we take that as an action item? Is everybody okay with that? Thank you.
So we'll get back to you with an executive summary as soon as we can get that together. That's going to take a little bit of time.
Thank you. So moving on to the approval of the minutes.
Move to accept the minutes.
Mrs. Sherman moves to accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Mr. Boyle seconds. In regards to the minutes, I think there's a correction that needs to be made on page 3 of 5. At the bottom of the italics, included in that motion was the statement, the procedure DKD-R shall be amended consistent with the motion.
Where do you want to put that?
Is that in the motion?
That goes at the end of this motion. It was, it was in the motion. I have the motion that I read
And that
here.
would be DKDR, because it wouldn't have been the policy, it would have been the procedure, correct?
No, it was the procedure, right. DKDR
The procedure
shall
piece.
be amended consistent with the motion.
Oh. It's in the motion.
Sorry, Kim, are you saying that should be
No,
on page 2,
it's on page 2.
above where the italics start? Is that,
Oh, okay. I thought it was part of the,
No.
I thought it was part of the motion.
So it is in the motion itself.
Directed, okay, okay. I had read it into
Okay, no,
this
because I
part of the
remember there was
motion.
a follow-up, and I thought.
Sorry about that. I was just looking at the motion.
Nope, you got it then. Okay.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Nancy.
Is there any more discussion with regards to the minutes? All in favor? Nine in favor? Opposed? 0 opposing, abstaining, 2 abstaining. Moving on to the SAU budget, what you have in front of you is the draft of the year-end actuals for the year end that closed out on June 30th. For those of you that can't see this, the budgeted to actual was favorable by $221, which means that we spent the entire budget except for $221. If I'm reading this correctly, Mr. Dowd?
Well, that is correct, yes.
Okay,
Can I ask some questions?
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Dowd, if you could respond, I'm seeing here budgeted versus actual, and, we have several items in here, custodial services, $7,000, actual $7,000, maintenance, supplies, $300 for custodial, $300, $7,500 for electricity, $7,500 actual, natural gas, $3,000, actual $3,000. It's hard to believe that we would spend exactly that amount.
We are spot on. Budgeting is top-notch here. That is an amount that we pay, SAU pays, to Timberlane
Right.
for services in connection with the use of this building.
So we don't have any kind of metering
Correct.
aspects. Everything's billed through Timberlane, and it's just an agreed,
Reimbursed
okay.
by SAU. So Kim, to address your question, yes. For the revenue that we had come in, we spent just below that. However, as part of our budget, you'll see that we include $25,000 from the unencumbered fund balance. And you'll see that at the bottom. If you look at the budgeted receipts, you'll see $2,172,471 under that budgeted column. And you'll see under the expenditure, the budget would be $2,172,471. But you'll see that our actual expenditures were $2,150,156. It's a little deceiving because of the way that it's presented here. We've met our revenues essentially. We haven't touched. We haven't used the $25,000 from fund balance that was part of the original budget. So we're a little bit more favorable than that. A little bit more favorable than the couple $100 you see.
Oh, so we're favorable at $22,315.
Essentially. Yep.
The overages, one of them is in the employee retirement line. Could you explain why that's 15,000 more than we budgeted for?
Which line are you on?
I'm on
29.
221.
221, right? Yep. 15,229. And that would be in relation to certain payouts. We had an employee retire, and we have had other payouts throughout the year on which employee retirement, which was subject to employee retirement. So from a salaries perspective, that was fine. Any of the additional payouts that were subject to employee retirement, NHRS retirement, came out of that line.
Okay. But this would not be, this payout would not be reflected. The other thing that, board members, you have in your packet here is a long spreadsheet that shows salary details for all the SAU employees. So if you flip to the back, this, just to give you the perspective on this, this was requested by the Timberlane Withdrawal Planning Committee as we were trying to look at budgets and salaries and staffing. So, Mr. Dowd, so this retirement, employee retirement is not, is a separate line item. It's not included. If an employee retires, we don't see it in this salary line.
Correct. And if an employee retires and, if anything is paid out to them as part of that retirement, that would be subject to New Hampshire Retirement System. We don't see that here.
Okay.
And the employee would have made a
Don't see
contribution
it
as well.
here? We don't see it here. Is that what you just said?
You don't see it on the long
Okay,
spreadsheet, no.
Okay.
'Cause that's not going to the employee, that's going to the New Hampshire retirement system. And the employee is also making their contribution to the New Hampshire retirement system on that as well.
So that 15,000 was to the New Hampshire retirement system?
Correct, yep.
So is it safe to say that that entire line that we paid of $136,452 went entirely to the New Hampshire retirement system?
For the most part, yep, a solid majority of it.
What other thing could it go to then?
Just double check to make sure we haven't paid anything else. I'm pretty sure that's all New Hampshire retirement system.
Nothing goes to Blue Cross, nothing goes to health benefits there for retired people.
No, just want to make sure we haven't, nothing else gets caught in there. Peripheral, if it would be minor.
Previous retired people.
Are you asking a question, Mrs. Sherman, or?
I'm done. Thank you, I'm sorry I
I
didn't
didn't
get
know if you got
permission.
the answer, or, no, it's fine, I just wasn't sure if it was like previous retired.
You know,
Question mark.
stream of thought.
Okay,
Yeah, that is all entirely New Hampshire retirement system.
Okay.
okay. Mr. Boyle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions there, Jeff. So, on the 8.5 by 11 sheet, that's stamped draft, it says like salaries, $1,065,521. Is there, for the fiscal year 18-19, so is there any place I can find that?
Yes. So if you look at the 2018, where it says 2018, 2019, the whole column there in bold,
Okay,
the first one, you'll see those figures are included there. That brings you to $1,021,448, right, at the bottom of that column
On the left side of the sheet, Brian.
on the left side.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the right side, okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And then if you add in,
Thanks, John.
yep, like a performance incentive, extra hours, service recognition, those will all be part of that number.
Okay, thanks. And the other thing, which is, I see that, which is always good, that, so like you budgeted $396,800 for employment insurance, and the actual was almost $60,000 less, so obviously that you must have had some favorable, must have been employees here that didn't have to take as much or something?
Correct, yep. Yeah, we had a position which was not hired for, or which was not filled, and that makes up a portion of that.
Okay. And my last one is that, so another one of the unfavorables was other employee benefits, so
Yes.
the other employee benefits,
Yes, that is, that account is set up, if you recall, it's a little confusing, but that account is set up to operate, to serve as a way to pay out anything we may have should employees separate from the district, or, and we also pay, for example, for any omni fees that we get for 403B type affairs. We have a sick leave redemption, which may be paid out upon separation. We have compensated absences, which may be paid upon separation or upon request. We have sick day buyout, which could be paid upon separation, which would be different than our normal sick day buyout budget line. That sick day buyout would be a cost associated with separation. So the total cost of those, or the total liability of those, is not fully budgeted every year. So this particular year, I budgeted, $115,000. Our total liability actually far exceeds that. The idea being that we can build up our fund balance, which we've done, in order to satisfy those, should we have a particular year that they all come due. So that line would be a line that I think the year prior to that probably had 45,000 favorable.
Right.
And this year has 45,000 in the negative, because we had built that up over the years to satisfy. So we aren't having to budget that amount every year. We do want to have the cash to be able to pay it upon demand, which is captured in that fund balance.
all right, thanks.
Okay, and then from these other employee benefits, I assume that the compensatory time buyouts would come out of that line?
Correct. That's where the budget, that's where they come out.
So we had a compensatory time buyout of $128,706 last year? Is that correct?
Oh, okay. Yes, I believe so. Yep.
So, and this is why I've had questions from the board about this. So the breakout here is the assistant superintendent had a buyout of $32,21.
Correct?
The CFO had a buyout of $16,202. Director of Human Resources had a buyout of $16,918. The superintendent had a buyout of $92,364.
Correct.
Do we still have any outstanding compensatory time hours? I've asked for this multiple times from the superintendent's office for the board to have this evening. Do we have that information?
I think it's part of this package. Let me just double check and I can distribute this. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's going to be on, I believe, second or third to last page.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dodd, if you have an extra copy, could you provide one to Attorney Brock back here? And maybe you could walk the board through what's in this packet, since I've just gotten it.
Certainly. There was a request for signed voucher sheets associated with the payouts of compensatory time in the 2018-2019 year. So you'll see those voucher cover sheets. Further on in, there was a request for the authorization.
Sorry, so these payouts these are the payroll vouchers for all the SAU employees, is that correct?
That's correct, yep, for that entire pay run.
That pay period, but in this pay period, there's compensatory time pays.
Correct.
Payouts.
Mhm.
Okay.
Next, there was a request for Dr. Metzler's request to be paid compensatory time as well as the approval. I've included those. And we had reviewed a list of which you had requested, of the accumulation of comp time. And you'll see that for Dr. Metzler, beginning under selected job code. It's more in spreadsheet format. We also have a listing of leaves: personal leave, sick leave, vacation leave, bereavement. After that is the request and authorization for the payment of my comp time, compensatory time, as well as sheet detailing the accumulation of it, and the same for our Human Resources Director. And in addition to that, I believe it's the second to last page, you'll see that compensatory time balance. Worksheet. So really, it's not a lot at this point.
Second to last.
It pleases the board too, and just, I wanted you to be aware of another issue. We consulted with John Woodson in terms of payout, and they suggested we pay out at straight time because that had always been straight time, but we do have a complaint into the labor board because we do believe we've been undercompensated for our comp time. It should be compensated at time and a half. So Nancy is working with the labor board, and you'll be hearing from them at some point in terms of 50% on top of what was paid is what may be owed, but we're working that out now because we believe we were undercompensated for our comp time. we paid it out straight time because that was the suggestion of the law firm.
So that was so how far back does this potential liability go? To what year?
Well, if you're talking to me personally, mine would be
No,
right back to the day I started working.
So this goes back to 2013. But what about for other employees of the SAU who have been
I would
here?
imagine other employees may come out if they know that they were undercompensated and may be looking for compensation, that they should have been compensated if that's the ruling of the labor board, that we were undercompensated for our overtime. That would be any hours beyond 40 hours in a work week.
Okay. So any hours beyond 40 hours in a work week, or any time that you have requested compensatory time for?
I'll let Nancy explain where we are with this. Again, we paid straight time at the recommendation of our lawyers, even though we believed it should be time and a half. But Nancy can respond to you because she's the one dealing with the labor board out of HR. It's not my
Okay,
job.
Mrs. Lewis, before you proceed, do you have written documentation from Drummond and Wilson to that fact?
Drummond and who?
Drummond,
Woodson, yeah.
Woodson, do you have do you have documentation from that firm stating that they recommended that the payout be at straight time? Is there written documentation?
I talked on the phone with Drummond Woodsum, and they said, just do what past practice has been. You shouldn't change your past practice at this point. And, I contacted the Labor Relations Board and inquired, and they supported the fact that anything over 40 hours should be compensated, even if it's exempt, at time and a half.
Do you have when did you speak to the attorney? Do you have a record of that phone call?
I have a record, just notes that I took.
Can you tell me what year that,
Okay, so
sorry,
it was
excuse
within
me.
the last,
Mr. Broth, did you want to,
I'm just wondering who it was, so it wasn't me.
Megan?
Megan Glenn, correct.
Okay.
And that was a couple of weeks ago when we were first looking at the change to the process of compensatory time.
so, I'm going to let the attorney speak first, because I'm,
It looks mind-blowing, doesn't it?
Curious, when,
yes, could you come up to the mic, please, so that everybody can hear you?
sorry, because it is my law firm, I just want to have a clear understanding of what's going on. So, Nancy, when you spoke to Attorney Glenn, who is counsel for the SAU board, as is the firm, did you let her know that you were inquiring about how you personally should be compensated, or what the board should be doing? You're calling on behalf of the board, or are you calling on behalf of yourself?
So I was calling on behalf of the SAU to find out about the new changes. So it must have been back when we had the change by the board. So that would be the last in June, the minutes they just approved. So there was a change. I wanted to make sure that I understood everything to do with that change, what my requirements were. And so she guided me. I said, when we pay them out, if they ask to be paid out, we have to pay them out. How do we pay them out? Do we pay them out at past practice, or, as I understand, do we pay them out at time and a half? Because when I checked with the labor board, that's what they had said.
And her recommendation at that time was past practice.
practice.
Don't make any changes to what you're doing.
But this was within the last month after we changed it, but this was not years ago. This was within the last month. The majority of these payments, other than the 7/7 payment, were made before you requested advice from counsel?
Correct.
So you've been doing it as past practice, and then within the last, I'm not accusatory here, I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going on here.
Individual employees consulted with their own lawyers and said that we should be getting time and a half, and that we should check with our HR director, and that's where we're at. So we're gonna see where that goes, and then we'll let you know, but you may be hearing from individual employees in regards to compensation that they were undercompensated for, a number of people over a number of years.
Mr. Bross, should
just-
we request a recess and have the board go into a non-meeting with counsel at this point?
Can I just ask?
I'm asking your advice. It would be or
It would be a non-meeting. If we have counsel here, we can go into a non-meeting at any time.
we can recess and go into a non-meeting, can we not?
Yes.
Can I just ask a
Would you-
question before we do that?
Go ahead.
Before we go too far down that path, these numbers are not adding up for me.
What numbers?
What's in this packet that we got, for each individual payout totals, about $80,000. And the payout for the superintendent is $92,000. So there's something missing here.
I did notify the SAU that there was something missing and requested that it would be corrected.
I don't know in what year, the current year?
The superintendent's,
All these signed
Yep.
the signed,
total 80,000.
Oh, okay.
600 and something.
Yes.
And then on here, it's showing
92.
92,000.
Correct.
So is there another one of these that you could get for us?
A portion of the superintendent's match, I believe, and this was approved by previous boards, to the superintendent's 403B match is paid from comp time. And that's just standing. There's no ongoing request, or had been standing. There's no ongoing request.
okay. What-
So you'll note the difference between the two is that amount.
The match
Hmm?
is paid.
So we'd redeem comp time essentially to,
Hours were cashed in annually to match the 403 contribution that the district makes on my behalf.
Why wouldn't that be under retirement incentive?
It's under, I don't know.
So,
I didn't
but,
make
just so I
the- I didn't make the
understand, so
spreadsheet.
that $10,000, is that the superintendent's contribution that comes out of that, or is that the district's match?
$20,000 annually. It's $10,000 the district pays, and then $10,000 was in comp time redemption.
to match that.
So that's your time that you're putting, so the district matches 10,000 that you put in.
Correct.
And so the 10,000 that you put in is coming from the comp time.
Over the years, not all the years, but some of the years, yes.
Right, yes, okay, thank you.
With intent to try to pay down the liabilities.
Okay, I do have another question on these payroll voucher cover sheets. When we move on to the fifth sheet down, that's with dated 4/3/2019, at the bottom. The fifth sheet in. Do you see that, Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Why is there no one listed on this voucher from SAU55's board? We have the chair of the Timberlane Board, we have the chair of the Hampstead Board. Typically, there are
Oh.
two signatures for SAU Board, chair and vice chair. Why is there no one listed?
That was prior to your reorganization.
So there was no chair and vice chair of the SAU. Is this always done this way in this voucher in April?
Well, I think typically if we have returning, if we have returning folks from the school district, returning chairman, vice chairman, I
I
assume.
was the vice chair and I'm still here.
Okay.
So why is my name not on this voucher?
Oh, I don't know. You were certainly more than welcome to sign it. Yeah, I would normally
I
say,
didn't sign a voucher that didn't have my name on it.
oh,
Why is, I don't understand why my name is not on this voucher.
I don't know. I think it was more of a question of, you know, who is it? I don't think we had ever had a period of having had such a gap in between the actual election and the organizational meeting.
I don't think we usually, I don't want to go back and forth. I would like to see the payroll vouchers from the first pay period in April from 2019, or 2018, and 2017, and 2016. I want to see if this is past practice.
So you were the vice chair up
Was the
until we
vice
had a
chair.
new, so there was no
Until we
gap.
met to reorganize, she was still the vice chair.
Correct. So you should have been on that as the vice chair, that's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
That's the only one that's not like that.
The person that's no longer, this is not you, but I'm just weighing in on this, the person that's no longer a member of the board should definitely not be on there.
Correct.
People that
I
are
would
still in
agree.
office,
I would agree with that.
I mean, if you're looking at, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have someone that's no longer an elected official.
No.
Right.
And not somebody else replaced them.
Correct.
Leadership at the SAU is a little bit different, but not completely. But it's that flux where, that's why I end up opening the SAU meeting, because we really don't have anybody we don't have a chair or vice chair to start the meeting.
For the purposes of this, we did have a vice chair.
Well, that's,
No, but I open the reorganizational meetings in Hampstead, Timberlane, and the SAU, from not the previous chair, even if they're still elected.
Right.
Right, but that has nothing to do with this.
There's nobody in charge of, there's no officers at that point.
We
So
had
I-
had a
I-
vice chair.
I don't disagree that if you're still an elected official, you should have access to sign, we should have 4 people that have access to sign the vouchers, I don't disagree. Right,
Well,
so,
you only need 2, correct?
but we only need 2.
okay. I know Mr. Broth is running, but I do want, because Mr. Boyle and I, to inform the board, did go to speak to Mr. Dowd, and we did have these hours, these comp time hours, for the superintendent. And I dated back to 2013. So, just so you're aware, that this payout this year is not the entirety of the payout. Roughly calculating based on 1,834 hours, the total payments, and I would like this number exactly, Mr. Dowd, if you could get it, from January of 2013 to 6/8/2019 was about 144,000. So we're potentially looking at
72 more.
72 more for just that, based on what we were just told. Okay, so that represents, at 144,000, at straight time, that represents about 20,000 a year, 262 hours a year, or about 6.5 weeks per year of compensatory time.
So that doesn't include or it does include that 10,000 that we put over?
That's all of it, I think.
It's in it,
I think she has all the hours.
yeah,
That's about right.
okay.
So, back to
It's what happens when you work 7 days a week.
You shouldn't have been.
So you're saying it's 4 hours a week, essentially, if you break it down even further, right? 262 hours a year, 4 hours a
You want me to
week.
break it?
No,
I brought
I'm
my
saying.
calculator.
All right,
4 hours away.
gotcha, understood.
And many board members will recall those Saturdays and Sundays that they heard from me,
Yep.
present and past, as I work 7 days a week.
Okay. Yep.
Mr.
I'm not
Boyle.
doing that now.
Mr. Boyle.
Well, along those lines, yeah, I agree. I've had conversations with you, Dr. Metzler, on weekends, but, and myself and him had a brief conference call with council a couple weeks ago. And quite honestly, I'm still struggling with this whole thing because the superintendent's contract does not even allow for any comp time at all. I'll be honest with you, I've been on this, my 3rd year in the board, and I just found out that there was comp time being accrued, or, what's happened has happened. It's obviously been going on for years, and I'm just, I don't really know how it happened.
But Brian, I think it's important to note, right, that's, the contract is what you're legally obligated to provide. And if the board chooses to provide more, which they did, and that's how it went, right? So that's no different than exempt, non-exempt. An employer can pay people well beyond, that's the minimum standard. We always get caught up in the minimum standards. Employers can pay more. Exempt employees can have time. Right? I mean, I get directives at 10 o'clock at night when I'm on vacation. I get directives.
I'm not sure why, and this is, you brought up the point, so if you're on vacation, there should be somebody else in charge of this SAU so that your vacation time is not interrupted, and I don't
That's-
understand why that's not
In
happening.
theory, that makes perfect sense. That is just not the reality. It's not. It's just not. There are certain things that I have to do. And it's not that I don't trust people, it's just, there's a level of responsibility and accountability that's associated with running 2 districts and 9 schools and 5,000 students and all these people, and Kathy Belcher will tell you, because I'm talking to Kathy on Saturdays and Sundays and at night. I shouldn't be doing that either. But that's just the job. That's the job. And so, for you to not recognize that somebody, when they go above and beyond, have to work more, that you compensate them more, and I'm not I don't mean that to be insulting. I'm just saying, it's a lot of additional work. There's a lot, and if you, and I'm trying to, I'm listening to your directives. That's why I said during normal business hours, please. Let's talk during, I'm trying not to respond to you at night or on the weekends. I'm trying not to, but there are certain things that are timely. It could be an emergency, right, which Timberlane had an emergency meeting, right, so it's an emergency. There's certain things, you know, and I have to tell you, this police chief wants to talk to the superintendent. They don't want to talk to the business administrator or the human resource officer, or the assistant superintendent doesn't exist. They want to talk to the superintendent. So I have to talk to them Saturday night, Sunday night.
But that goes with the job.
Well,
That goes with the job, because I can, I'm sure you're now dealing with 5 police chiefs, the 5 towns you deal with. And as a former Atkinson selectman, I can tell you that, you know, your Atkinson chief of police is, whatever has to happen, he does. So whether it takes him,
And when- and
if
the
it's
bo-
2:00 in the morning, if something happens, he gets woken up and he deals with it.
And if you chose to offer your employees additional compensatory time for their work, they would say thank you and they'd take it. And that's what my employer did, and we're still beating this dead horse, which I have to tell you, it's starting to feel like harassment. It's
Well-
starting to feel like harassment.
well-
Because now it's about an employee that exercised a benefit that the board endorsed, and now it's feeling like harassment, which is really leading towards a hostile work environment for me and other employees in this SAU. You need to know. That's how it feels. And that your
Okay.
attorney can hear it too. That's how it feels. We've already addressed this, now we're addressing it again.
Excuse me.
Can you, point of order, can you bring it down a little?
Excuse me, Dr. Metz.
It's yelling.
Now, when this was brought up a couple weeks ago, through a policy standpoint, and Attorney Broth crafted it, and we went through a meeting quite a bit. That's quite an extended motion on that. I think it's safe to say that the board, as a board, had no idea that we were talking about 100,000 or more. Can I have a show of hands? Who knew that we were talking about $100,000? Answer: nobody.
Who knew we even had this policy?
Well, you've got, well.
That's
That's a
not
different
true, and I'm not
question.
gonna start calling people out. It's not true. I'm not gonna start calling
Well,
people out.
I'm just trying to put things in perspective. I'm not.
That's not
I'm trying to
perspective.
understand what's going on here. This is because, see, this is my 3rd year on the board. I know Mrs. Yusanker and Mrs. Sherman have been on the board. This is probably their 5th or 6th year, so they've been on the board longer than I have. So they may have known more about this than I did not know any of this. Now, And when I heard that, when it happened, I was a little surprised. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Smith?
New to the board, I didn't know about it, right? I think it's a failure on the board to know or not know what's there. I also think it's a failure on the board to put a policy in place before knowing all liabilities. That night, we talked about that we should know what's on the books. Mm-hmm. But we still voted to put a policy in place. Our superintendent said he's gonna cash it out, without anybody saying, well, how much? Let's wait to find out.
Lee did.
These
Wait,
were
wait,
already
wait, let me
cashed
finish.
out.
Lee did ask
But-
that question.
We didn't know the total liability before putting that policy in place to put some sort of
It's in the
plan,
plan, isn't
instead of having a one whack for everything and everybody's gonna cash out. I think we
Can I-
should have.
Can I?
So I'd ask the board, just in the future, stuff like this, let's get the full information. To your point, Brian, nobody knew.
Oh, yeah, but what I'm saying, Lee, because I didn't know, Lee didn't know, and I think, and maybe it was misunderstood the question. We thought it was like $10,000 or something, and
But it's in every audit. It's been pointed out every single year.
Point of order.
The liability has been pointed out every single year, what the money that would be owed to employees as post-employment or benefits that,
Compensated absences.
compensated absences, or whatever they call them, every year. That's listed right in the audit every year.
But the fact remains that the majority of board members, other than the chairs, myself included, were not aware of this liability. Part of the reason this came out, was I was asked to sign a voucher that seemed to be out of the norm, okay? So, and I understand that you may be upset about the policy and the fact that we took this whack at one time. If you read these, if you look at these vouchers, these payouts all occurred before we took that vote to change the procedure last time. These were prior to that vote. I just want to make that clear, that change would not have changed what transpired here. This payout of compensatory time, that's all.
And it wouldn't have changed it whenever it was earned prior to any change in late June, so anything that was earned prior to that date, you know, I mean, I have a public statement that I'm prepared to make, you know, in regards to this, right, so.
That's fine. I guess that there's, and then when we come in tonight, and anyone who works here has their, they don't need permission of the board to seek their rights with whatever labor law is. Of course they have the right to talk to their person, the state about labor relations, this kind of stuff. That's great, but this is new territory for us too, and I think, I don't want to speak for the board, but as I look at it, certain positions have expectations. They're paid more, and you have to work harder, if you will, and you have more exposure. Then you have certain salaried people at a lower level that different people, you know, whether it's you get time and a half, or you get you accrued 3 days, and now you have a policy. You have so many pay periods to get that person to. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to handle this. But we are also learning on the fly here. There's obviously about an hour ago, we find out that there is also another potential liability here of another 50% if you now have to pay out a time and a half. Now, this is just the SAU, so there is 14 to 15 people versus Timberlane, which is 700 people. You know, granted, different classifications of salary. Hampstead would have their own things with the Hampstead School District, but I just you know, we're as a board, this is the first time we officially were together on this item. Now, whether it's been beaten around the bush doesn't really matter.
No, and I know, my public statement really is, you know, I'm honored the will of this, the new direction that this board wants to take moving forward. But we're talking about policies and procedures, and it was acceptable, and it was okay, and it was accrued, and people have cashed this out, and it's been going on for forever. And by the way, other districts don't have policies and procedures. Trust me when I tell you, people get compensated beyond their salaries in other districts as well. They don't have a policy and procedure. If you call, they'll be like, if you had called here prior to us saying policy and procedure, I don't know if you would have gotten that answer out of anybody in this office. I don't know. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. I don't know.
Right.
But this was brought to me. I didn't bring this to the board, and I didn't bring this to the district. This existed, right? So I report when I work. There are internal controls. I want people to know I don't approve my own comp time. I don't approve my own. I report when I work. And I work a lot. And I know we can agree to disagree about what you think. People get to decide what their time is worth, right?
Sure.
I get to decide whether all right, so if it's worth it, then it's worth it. If I want to put that kind of time in, and Attorney Bross said, oh, let him manage his time. Okay, well, I understand how this board feels moving forward. I just want you to hear me loud and clear in a sense, like, this feels like harassment. This was approved and acceptable, and we changed what we're doing in late June, and we're moving forward, but here we are still talking about it. We're beating this dead horse on again. And now, my thing is, right, so we look into it with our own personal attorneys, and you should be getting time and a half, exempt or non-exempt. So we're looking into that, right? We will be coming back, and individuals could be coming back, and you could be individuals from the past coming forward, right? That's kind of what happens when we continue to just go on and on and on about something, right? We paid straight time because that's what the attorneys told us to do. That's what you did in the past, pay them straight time. Done, right? So we're trying to move forward. This doesn't feel like a fresh start. This doesn't feel like moving forward. This feels like we're still revisiting the same stuff over and over.
I'm sorry, let me respond to this. We're looking at the budget that just ended. We're trying to have an understanding of this budget. To understand this budget, we need to see what was paid out and why. When we look at this salary line detail, frankly, I was surprised. And to say that there's no accusations here, there's no going backwards, there's no.
Well, you're not on Facebook. You're not on
Excuse me.
Facebook. Some of these other people are.
Dr. Metzler?
Yeah.
I don't care about Facebook. I don't know what they're saying on Facebook. This board is not making any accusations. This board is trying to have an understanding of what these payouts were and where we stand budget-wise and what our liability is moving forward and potentially what we should be budgeting for next year, because the next meeting is the draft budget in October.
I understand, but can you help,
Please,
can you help me
please,
understand?
I am not done.
All right, let me know when you're done. Because I have something I need to understand, but go ahead.
There is no one on this board that is saying that you did anything wrong. No one has made that statement. Board chairs have signed off on this compensatory time. What did not happen, though, is that the entire board was not aware of this. And that's why I'm bringing it to the board's attention, not to go backwards, but to have the board understand this, to have the board have a better understanding of budgets as we close out the year end, what potential liabilities we have, what assets we have, and what we need to be thinking about as we move forward for the next budget season as the budget's drafted this summer. That's what we're looking at right now. Thank you.
All right, can I go? No?
Yes.
Okay. And I do appreciate and respect that you're not on Facebook. But I'd ask the attorney, is it a good practice, as the board members, as my employer, right, or our employer, to be on Facebook writing negative things about the employees of this district, board members? Because that happens. If we want to start talking about who, we can.
We are not,
Well, I'm
ask
asking.
the question to the attorney. Mr. Broth.
Board members are just members of the community and have the same right to speak out as anyone else. Whether they choose to or not is their individual choice. It's not a board issue.
So you're saying it's okay for board members to write negative things about their employees on Facebook?
I think it'd be inappropriate for board members to disclose confidential information. That would be wrong. But if board members have opinions about the performance of district employees, it's their prerogative. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, that's their own personal decision to make. But it's certainly their prerogative to do that in the same way that any other member of the community might have an opinion about a school principal, a superintendent.
Okay, so that being said, I'm also a member of this community, right? So I can write about the board members then, right? On Facebook, that's okay too?
That is your prerogative.
Okay, and they couldn't do anything to me. They couldn't punish me for writing because it's my prerogative, right?
I guess it depends on what you write.
Okay, good to know. I'll start to let my feelings know.
I'll prove your membership to speak out
Oh,
Timberlake.
come on,
There
people,
you
come on.
go. Tim, I know you don't appreciate this. I know you don't support this. So why, as the chair, why don't you help run this board to say, like, we're not
She
going to do
does,
that
she
to the
does an awesome
employees?
job.
I have, as Mr. Broth said, these board members are members of the community. I cannot say to a board member, stop posting on Facebook. I can suggest, I can ask, but that's within their right to do what they want. So yes, I don't agree with it. I'm not a Facebook fan.
No, and I appreciate that. You've always been fair.
But I cannot infringe on, believe me, if
So
I,
employees too, though, right?
excuse me?
Employees too, right? We can go on Facebook and write whatever we want too, right?
Mr. Broth just explained what what he felt. He gave you the answer. Don't ask me
No, I know,
for
I have
that.
my own attorney that gave me my own answer, so I understand his answer. I got my own. I
Well,
got my own answer.
His answer is my answer. That's why we have him here.
It's been obvious from events in national news just this week that there are times where comments by employees can compromise their ability to effectively do their job. That, can have a consequence. But, so, yeah, there is some care that needs to be exercised by an employee in terms of their public statements.
So employees can be punished for what they write on Facebook.
Well, for example, just the police officer that was just fired in, I think, Texas or in Louisiana, wherever it was, because they suggested that a member of Congress should be killed. That compromised his ability to effectively perform his job. He was terminated. So there are circumstances where an employee can exercise their right to speak out, but undermine the effectiveness of either their own ability to do their job or the organization that they work for, that can have disciplinary consequences, including termination. Yes.
Makes sense.
Mrs. Silva?
I really don't want to beat a dead horse, and I don't want to go backwards too much, but some of the comments made by the superintendent about how whatever past practice was for comp time, whether that was paid out at straight time and it should have been time and a half. I don't remember the exact wording right now. I didn't write it all down, but something about that I really objected to, because our employees are due what they're due by law. This comes up with companies time and time again about being compensated for time they worked, didn't work, whether it's time and a half, straight time. I've seen it come up in companies before. It does go to the labor board. At the end of the day, employees are due what they're due. And it sounded, the way you worded it, very negative, almost like this board was doing something wrong and not compensating employees. If there was something that was done in the past that needs to be corrected, obviously that needs to be corrected for our employees.
Great, thank you. I didn't mean to make it sound negative, but I appreciate you supporting well,
I mean, if that
Whatever's
is
due
the
is
way
due.
it's
Yep.
supposed to be. I mean, I'm not an attorney, I don't sit on the labor board, I don't know. But just the way that came across, I just wanted to make it clear what my thought was on that, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And to that point, and Mrs. Louisel, maybe you can answer this question for me. I have the administrator benefits information sheet here that speaks to compensatory time. This does not speak to time and a half. So when you say time and a half, you're referring to the policy that was enacted. It's a board procedure that was enacted based on a policy. I think, Mr. Broth, that you may want to make a note of that, that it's not within the administrator benefit sheet.
Correct.
So because that procedure to that policy was only enacted in whatever that date was,
2016.
November of 2016, you're saying that the liability should, in my mind, at the very most, extend back to that date. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that, but I would let the labor board chime in on that.
So the complaint to the labor board then would be that this board did not follow a procedure that was written, but not written as subsequent to a policy that was enacted. So that would be the complaint to the board?
I believe the complaint to the board would be that compensatory time outside of a person's schedule, an administrative schedule, was not compensated at time and a half. So it's outside that 40-hour range. That's as I understood it to be.
Okay.
Saying that
That's
it's a
as technical
violation
as-
of procedure or violation of law?
Law. It would be under the Fair Standards Labor Act.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the, yeah.
Well, I guess it's even now more important that this gets very limited. Calm down.
I'm sorry, that it gets what?
Limited.
Oh.
So if you need more people, it's cheaper to have more people. You can't have people just, I have no idea what kind of money we're talking about here, but you can't just accruing in thousands of dollars. So, anyway.
Okay. Are there any more questions in regards to the budget? Comments? Mrs. Silva? Sorry. Oh, Mr. Broth.
Would it be all right if I ask just a couple questions so I have a better understanding
Certainly.
of
Please do.
companies? Nancy, you said you spoke to Attorney Glenn about 3 weeks ago?
When the board made a decision on policy DKD.
After June 24th?
Thank you.
Okay. When you spoke with her, did you provide her with DKDR for 2016 or make her aware of it?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. And then how long after you spoke to Attorney Glenn did you speak to the Labor Board?
I think I spoke to the labor board before and after. That's why I said, should we pay time and a half or should we pay straight time? And she said, you should pay your past practice.
Had the Labor Board given you advice or opinion about how you should pay before you spoke to Attorney Glenn?
The Labor Board's opinion was that even if you're exempt, that you're still paid time and a half after 40 hours.
Did you tell Attorney Glenn that you had gotten that advice from the Labor Board?
Yes.
And then you said you spoke to the Labor Board again after you spoke with Attorney Glenn?
Yeah, I just verified my information again, because Attorney Glenn gave me her opinion. I just checked again to make sure that we were following the right procedures. I had complaints from employees, and we all believed that if it was supposed to be time and a half, then we should be compensated at time and a half. And then we moved forward.
Okay. And did, after that second conversation with the Labor Board, did you let Attorney Glenn know that the Department of Labor was continuing to give you
No.
contrary advice?
No.
So, did you alert, you didn't alert council, did you alert anyone else of this potential liability issue for the district?
I talked to Dr. Metzler, Mr. Dowd.
Okay. And is this the first time that's been brought to the board's attention?
It
This
is.
is the
I-
first meeting since then.
I have
Right.
not been
First meeting
notified
since
at
the
all.
last, since we had that information.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, Mrs. Silva?
The only person's hours we have in here for comp time are the superintendents. And I noticed that some of these hours were put in on Fridays in the summer when we're in a 4-day work week. Are other employees putting in for comp time for a 5th day when we're on an approved 4-day work week?
Sometimes. Sometimes I'm here on Fridays. I have been here on Fridays the past couple of Fridays. And I'll be here this
So,
Friday.
Mr. Broth, just to kind of clue you in on Mrs. Silva's question, in the summer, the board typically votes, or for the summer, that the SAU employees can move to a 4-day work week. So her question pertains to whether or not people are putting in for compensatory time on Fridays when the office is closed, after the board has voted to move to a 4-day work week. That's all. Okay. Moving on to the assistant superintendent search, Dr. Metzler, you have an update?
Thank you. Yeah, I updated Chair and Chair of Hampstead recently. We've, you want me to go all the way back to the two candidates? I won't go into who they are, but we had an opportunity, we brought one candidate forward. They had an opportunity to meet one candidate. Said they wanted to look at other candidates, fair enough. All right, and so another candidate was brought forward for reasons. We did not think that that person was someone that we could bring here, so we moved on. We said, hey, let's widen the pool a little bit, and so Dr. Farris suggested we post an interim superintendent, which we posted. That's been posted for approximately Monday, Tuesday, so about 10 days. We don't have any qualified candidates that have applied. I don't want to go into detail because I could be talking about somebody specifically, but, you know, we're looking for someone with central office experience, someone with New Hampshire experience. I got that feedback, kind of, you know, someone that we feel could come in, someone that has, we just don't have anybody that's in the pool yet. We're hoping, I'm still making some phone calls and asking, but we don't have anybody to speak of.
Mrs. Silva?
Why are we limiting ourselves to somebody with New Hampshire experience?
I wasn't. The two candidates that I brought were from out of state, but that was feedback I got from Kim and from Caitlin, that they really wanted someone to have an understanding about how the New Hampshire way of doing business. So we're not, I mean, we're looking at all the candidates. We're not saying because you're from out of state, you're excluded. We just don't have
Okay,
anybody.
that was my concern.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, obviously, it's better to have somebody who has, because New Hampshire's pretty unique in how,
It's just a
some
tough,
of
it's
the
a tough,
funding and-
it's a tough time of year, because most people that wanted to work this year started July 1 and they're working. So we're still looking and we're still calling and asking around. So we've been I think specific in terms of the kind of feedback I've gotten, what we're looking for, so.
Mrs. Lowe's?
How many applications have you received?
We have what they, I explained this in the emails, okay, so somebody goes on Apple Track, they see it, and they get interested, and they start their application. They have to go through the whole process and then submit it.
Right.
So we'll get submitted and not submitted.
Right.
So we have, I believe, 1 not submitted, 3 submitted, no one that's qualified, right?
So you
Two
have
not
3
submitted.
submitted,
2
2 not
two
submitted,
not submitted,
3 submitted.
3 submitted.
And we looked at all 5 of them. Even if somebody had not submitted and they looked really good, we would obviously encourage them to submit it.
Okay, but what I'm asking is, did you guys see the 3 that were submitted?
No.
No.
Okay.
And that's not what, I mean, feel free to, if either of you feel that I'm incorrect. When we were having discussions about listing it, we agreed that, I hope I'm saying this correctly, that the superintendent was still going to bring someone forward to myself and Dr. Farah. And something that was important to him, and that I feel like once we knew about it is very important, is keeping those names confidential, because a lot of those people may already be working.
Right.
So we haven't seen those because we're still, as the directive of the board was to have Dr. Metzler bring candidates forward to us, and then we would interview, meet with them.
So just in the spirit of complete, transparency, I mean, I want to fill that position, so if there's anybody that's qualified that I thought I would recommend, I said, I'm not going to waste your time. I won't send anybody to you that I wouldn't recommend that you vote on to hire, right? So we're not just kind of going through we're really looking and making a few phone calls and talking to people that are already working somewhere else. And if they do submit and I get them to you, they're going to want that to be confidential unless you decide to hire them, because that'll hurt them at their other job.
Right. Mr. Moore?
Well, you had a senior staff resignation in the last 48 hours. Is that official yet?
That's not
It will be official when you accept it or whatever we're doing.
So I shouldn't mention that person's name?
Not in the SAU meeting.
No, the reason,
It's
well,
a Timberlane employee.
no, well, it was a person who was highly thought of and basically was considered for the job permanently that we were recommending as an interim. So, it's too late, she's gone.
I don't want to say too much, but you can be assured that the conversation that you would expect me to have with her prior to her, we had a discussion. But
I know this isn't on the agenda, but do we have an update on the assistant treasurer position, and we are advertising the bookkeeper position, correct? Accounting position? Do we have an update on those?
No.
We're not advertising it?
No, we're not advertising the bookkeeper position because while the position was approved, it was not part of the budget for the current budget cycle. So, I think that now that the board is here,
trying to find the money.
well,
You mean the budget cycle that just started July 1?
our current year,
So you don't feel there's the money within there, that budget now?
well,
We're getting closer.
we're getting closer.
The position that's open, that's not being, we're not spending that
Good.
money, so we're getting closer.
Good, bad, or otherwise, right, there is,
I alluded to that last night a little bit, because we had, that was how we were gonna fund that, because we have a position that's left open. We'll get to that number that you needed to support the bookkeeper. And that person may only, if we find an assistant superintendent, maybe they're 80%, maybe they're 70% of the year, 60%, that number starts to drop.
Right, okay.
I would be very comfortable, I think the money would be very, very close if it were something that didn't happen until the end of August. So if there were not a person in that position prior to the end of August. And as we're getting closer and we go through the process and you think how long the process generally takes, that would probably be the earliest that you'd have someone in that position realistically now.
Think of it, it's 1/6 of the salary, because that's 2 months that would be already gone, July.
My question would be, is that previously we were talking about, over the budget, about, going over various line items for purposes of paying out and talking about the unreserved fund balance and so forth for that purposes. But then now we're taking a different approach and saying that we can't do anything that the board had recommended to hire this person, and now we can't find the money. So it's like you can't have it both ways.
I don't think that's, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's exactly it. I think the directive was advertising when you have the money, right? Don't just go ahead and do it. And I think we have a strategy where we'll have the money soon, right? I don't think we'll have an assistant superintendent by September 1st. I don't. I'd like to, but I don't.
We didn't all of a sudden just create this money when we make it a directive to hire somebody to fill this position that was desperately needed in the accounting aspects because of all of our audits and so forth. But
Did I misunderstand that directive? Because I thought it was, we can do it if we find the money.
No, the
Yeah,
motion is right here in the minutes.
Right.
Motion to add a part-time accountant and/or bookkeeper to the business offer contingent upon budget constraints.
I had that right. Okay.
And again, we're getting very close. I think at this point, I'd probably be comfortable based on what I'm hearing. Probably wouldn't happen before September 1st.
I would have thought that we had that we did have it, but I stand corrected then.
Kim?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to understand the process. So, are you saying that we're not expected to have the funds until the end of August, or that we won't start advertising till the end of August?
I would need to have the current position that's open until the end of August, and that would generate enough room in the budget. That money not being used at that point would likely cover that part-time employee for nearly all of the year.
So are we going to advertise for that in advance and hope to hire for September? I'm just thinking about the date, like we're already almost at the end of July.
You're talking about the assistant bookkeeper position?
Yes.
Yes. At this point, based on the discussion that I'm hearing now, I have the confidence, even post tomorrow.
Okay,
that
that's what I'm getting at. I was like, I don't want to wait until the
No.
end of August and post and then be looking at,
And it would be posted something like open until filled, and we could have great candidates in 48 hours, or I don't think it's gonna take 4 weeks. So,
On that
but
position.
right, but to post it with an anticipated start date of September 1 or whatever, so people
Yeah.
are clear on that
And
expectation.
and someone may be able to start sooner. It's more the assistant superintendent position that would need to stay open until then.
Yep.
to Free up the money.
What about the assistant treasurer, Kim?
Did we have any luck with the assistant treasurer?
I've spoken with Kathy, who's actually been another great treasurer. So, and I expect that if I can catch her ear again, I can impart that it would be helpful to do that. I think I wanted to get her set up on our systems right now, the way that they are, the way that we need them integrated. She's doing a great job, and I think that we'll be having, it might be a possibility.
Okay, great.
So,
All right. Sorry, I was looking at something and trying to, I lost my train of thought. Okay, is there any other, topics or discussion? I think, and Attorney Broth, maybe you can provide me some direction that the board should go into a non-meeting with council at this point?
If you have questions of me relative to some of the issues that came up today, I'd be happy to talk with you.
Okay. I do.
Is a non-public on the agenda?
Well, there is a
She just
non-public.
puts it on the, holds a spot.
It holds the spot for the
Oh, okay.
non-public.
I didn't know if there was
Doesn't
actually a
necessarily
non-public. Okay.
mean that we need it.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions or comments from the board or anything, we'll move to adjourn the meeting at 8:21 and move into a non-meeting with council. Dr. Messler,
Do you
sorry.
need us for anything else?
No, I think we're all set.
And are you all set for tomorrow night in terms of the information and stuff that you need, just while you're here?
Yeah, no, you're gonna be present tomorrow, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a couple of executive summaries that you asked for, I think.
Thank you.